Our guest tonight, this evening, to close out our artist series, is a man of many talents. He's a singer, he's a lyricist, he's a performer, he's a musician, he's an author, he's a radio host. Which Jarvis do you know? Is he the lead singer of the hugely popular and influential band Pulp? Is he the host of the eclectic and unique BBC Sunday Service radio show? Is he the author of 2 books? Is he the guy singing and dancing around a campfire in a Wes Anderson movie? Or maybe he's just the guy you've seen at the back of the Beauvoirs for many years at our PSRS shows. Which Jarvis do you know? Which Jarvis is the real Jarvis? Will we ever know? Does he even know? Maybe we'll get a little closer this evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure to welcome our longtime friend, the lovely and talented Mr. Jarvis Cocker. Everybody, clap in your loudest and mutest way. Nice and loud. Stop. Now, the deafening silence of Zoom. Jarvis, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Hello, everybody. Hi there.
You'll get used to the kind of awkward many faces but no sound thing, but maybe you're used to it. I don't know. Cool. Let's just jump right in. Like all of our other guests, you were kind enough to make a beautiful playlist of music for us, which we can all listen to on our Rock School Spotify. And we're going to be listening to some of those songs because there's some interesting choices here. But you've known about us for a while. You've been in our world for a while, which has been a pleasure. You kind of know what we're all about. We've got a lot of students, some parents, but a lot of students on the call. Can you start just by telling us how this whole thing started?
Well, that's partly what my playlist is about, like the 2 songs that we heard whilst we were waiting to start speaking. There was a song by The Fall and a song by Echo and the Bunnymen. And they were 2 bands that when I was first starting off, there was a DJ in the UK, which I'm sure a lot of people may have heard of, and his name was John Peel. Mm-hmm. And this guy used to have a radio show on the BBC at 10 p.m. till midnight, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And that basically was my musical education. I started listening to him around 1978 or something, because it was the only place that would play like alternative music. And I would get told off by my mother because I was supposed to be sleeping so I could get up to go to real school in the morning. But I thought that I was getting a better education by listening to him playing music and talking between 10 p.m. and midnight each night. So my studying probably at school probably did suffer slightly, but the music that I discovered from there and the inspiration I got from it has stuck with me through the rest of my life. Yeah.
Now, how old were you at that time? You kind of discovered it.
It would have been in the immediate aftermath of punk rock, which happened at around 1976. I guess I started listening to him in 1977, something like that. So I would have been 14 years old.
Okay. And before 14, music was not really on your radar? You weren't taking piano lessons or whatever else? Or?
Yeah, but the thing was that, and we were talking about this before everybody else joined us, I'd always wanted to be in a band, but up till that point, I'd listen to the radio, you know, like pop radio when I was getting ready to go to school in the morning and stuff like that, and I would watch pop shows on TV. But I always thought it was something that was really far away and out of reach, that maybe you had to have like a degree to be allowed to be in a band or something. And I was really frustrated about it. You know, I kind of had a guitar, but I couldn't play it, and I just didn't know what to do. And then luckily for me, this punk thing happened, and the punk thing just said, doesn't really matter if you can't play so much. It's more about having some enthusiasm and some attitude. So I was really excited to try and listen to punk music, but they didn't really play it on normal radio, and that's how I discovered John Peel. Was he was the only person playing it, and so that's when I started to think, oh, I could be in a group, because things like The Fall and the Echo and the Bunnymen didn't sound as difficult as like Genesis, you know, like with lots of lots of things. If it's just like I thought I could do that.
So it was guitar that you first did the thing on?
Well, I'll show you, look, because the thing is, so I've got a guitar here. See, the best thing that I ever discovered was a bar chord. You know, you can make a chord. Let me show you. Can you see my hand? But then the great thing is, instead of having to learn lots of weird shapes, if you just learn that chord and then you just move it. That's it. One chord, you can play anything.
This is you've unlocked the secret of rock school. I wish you didn't tell everybody, but it's just it's that easy.
Well, that's it. And still, even though I have tried to learn a bit more over the years, that's still what my guitar playing is based around. Is just moving up and down the neck as quickly as possible. Previous to being to picking a guitar up, I had my mother had sent me to piano lessons when I was really young, when I was like 7 or something. And the thing that I found really frustrating was I arrived at the piano lesson, the first lesson, and the woman, you know, she opened the case of the piano and I could see the keys there, the black and white keys tantalizingly laid out in front of me. But she just said, you can't touch the keyboard. You've got to learn what all the notes are called first.
Yeah.
And I just thought, that's terrible. So I didn't I wanted to play music. I didn't want to like be able to say what the notes were, like, oh, that's C and that's D. I wanted to at least maybe just play chopsticks or something, just to make some kind of musical noise. So anyway, she threw me out of the class. She after the first lesson, she wrote a note for me to take home to my mother, and I gave it to my mother, and it said, "Do not send your son to me again. He wants to be Beethoven after the first lesson."
Do you still have the note?
I don't have that note. I wish I did have that note.
We should find that note. We should frame that note. But let me just let's dial up that first song that you put in the playlist, and I'd like to hear why that made it on there.
Okay.
It's such a beautiful song. So what's the story there?
Well, yeah, it's good that you've played that, because so far we've really spoken about the musical side of writing songs and stuff like that. But that song that you just played there was a big hit in the UK. I guess when I was like 5 or 6 years old. I think it was like the #1 record. And I remember hearing it on the radio. And when he says the bit about, "I want to look inside your head," I got really frightened. Like, I thought, well, that just seemed a really scary idea, that somebody could look inside your head without asking permission or something. So that was the first time that I heard some words in a song that really affected me in some way. And that song stayed with me through the years. And I think it's a good place to start talking about lyric writing, because in a way that's the other aspect that I really was affected by and fell in love with songs, is how in a way they do look inside your head. A song, if you hear it at the right time, will seem to sum up everything you think about something, or you know, you remember really key moments of your life by the song that was playing at that time and stuff like that, and it will really bring back that. So that power of music and of words combined with music, it gave me like a little shiver, you know, when people say they get goosebumps when they hear songs. And once I'd had that feeling, I kind of wanted to have that feeling more, but I also wanted to learn how to do it myself by writing my own songs. So that was a big inspiration, I suppose.
Let's just play that second one real quick, because I think that speaks to the music portion of something a little bit. Let me see here. So it's a bit of an occupational hazard for me, but I'm like always on the lookout when I hear a song. I think even just subconsciously, I'm analyzing it to see if like 10-year-olds can play it. And whenever I find them, I put it on this like master list of, oh yeah, that could work. That could work. That's not that hard.
Yeah.
And that's a perfect one where, like, you know, musically and harmonically, it's pretty simple. And it's just before we let everybody in, we were talking about some of these songs, and you mentioned that was one of the first that you tried with the band. I mean, was this a band before Pulp, or is this what would become Pulp?
No, so that song again was a song from my early childhood. It's by the Monkees, and for people too young to know about the Monkees, the Monkees was like a made-up group that were on TV. There was a TV series, and they had adventures and things, but they also played songs. It was kind of like a rip-off of the Beatles. And I loved that show when I was a kid, and that's another factor that made me want to be in a group, because the Monkees all lived in the same house together, and I thought that seemed like amazing. And probably when I was a kid, I might have even thought it was a documentary, like it was like Big Brother or something. I don't know. But yeah, so when I formed a group, I thought we'd try and learn Stepping Stone by the Monkees, and this was a good example of using the bar chord creatively. Stepping stone. I've almost got it.
I got it on the finger.
For a long time, but yeah, I think it's really. I remember like our very first rehearsal. I wanted to be in a band. The punk thing happened. That made me feel like I could have a band. I managed to persuade some friends at school to come to our house, basically by offering them some beer. And I knew that I had to have some stuff ready, so I worked that song out, and I didn't know the names of the notes, so I just shouted out the number of the fret. So I was going like 5, 5, 8, 8, 10, 10, 13, 13, 5, 5, and everybody had to kind of. It's probably what you do a lot, Jason.
Because it's not that different.
Yeah. And we kind of could play it almost, and that was important, you know, that because we'd managed to almost play a song, then that meant that it was fun, and then people kept coming back to the rehearsals, and that's how the band started. And the band was called ARABICUS Pulp at that time. The ARABICUS thing came from, we made up the idea for a group when we were in an economics lesson at school, and we were studying the stock market for some reason in the economics lesson, and Arabicus was the name of a commodity. I think it's like coffee beans or something.
Were you kind of putting on shows of cover songs? Like, were you a cover band, or did you kind of quickly jump into writing and trying to get some sort of sound as a band?
Yeah, well, the thing was that because you know, rock school didn't exist in my day, Jason. You know, if only it had.
I'm so sorry.
So we were having to teach ourselves, but we managed to play Stepping Stone, and I think we also could play House of the Rising Sun. But after that, all of the songs seemed to be too complicated to learn. So then we just had to write our own songs, because then they could be as simple as they needed to be for our limited ability. So that's really, we started writing songs really just out of desperation, because other people's songs were too difficult.
Why did you have to be the singer? Nobody else wanted to step up?
Yeah, I think because it was my idea to have a band. It was like, well, you're the singer then. And also because you must find that, and in fact, I know that you have this problem, the real downside of being the singer is that probably means that you're going to have to be this lyric writer as well. And as I know that you found from your years doing the rock school, getting the kids to write lyrics is always the hardest bit, isn't it? And I really sympathize with that, because I remember that. It's just stressful, because it's like you're worried that you're going to write something and then people are going to say, well, that's lame, or that's a bit soppy, or that's whatever, you know. So you are laying yourself on the line a little bit. And so the natural reaction is to shy away from that and say, no, I'm going to be the drummer.
Yeah.
Whatever. But because I was so desperate to have a band, I kind of accepted that I would have to be the songwriter as well.
And how did you manage those emotions of, you know, who wants to listen to what I have to say, or I have nothing to say? How'd you power through that?
Well, I can play you another song, you see. So I think the way that I really got through that initially was I wasn't ready to write something too, you know, emotional or whatever. So you've got to remember that when we started the band, I was 14, 15, or 14, I think, 14. So pretty young. I'm making an excuse. So we were studying Hamlet, you know, the Shakespeare play, in English at school, and everybody was finding it pretty difficult and boring. So I wrote a song about Shakespeare, so that I thought that would make the other guys in the band laugh. So it was called Shakespeare Rock. I'm going to play a little bit of it for you. So. Got a baby, only one thing wrong. She quotes Shakespeare all day long. I said, baby, why ignoring me? She said, to be or not to be. Shakespeare rock, Shakespeare roll, Shakespeare rock, Shakespeare roll. It was a bit longer than that, but I thought I'd give you the abridged version.
Yeah. That never made it on an album.
It didn't, no. It never got recorded. It was, but you know, it got me through that thing that by making it into a joke, that was one way to kind of avoid this kind of trauma of having to open up. But eventually you have to open up, otherwise songs don't mean anything. They have to, unless a song means something to you, you can't really expect it to mean anything to other people.
Yeah.
Eventually you have to get there, but I needed to build a bit of confidence before I could do that. I think it's the fundamental issue that anybody who wants to be a songwriter has to get over, is what am I going to write about? You know, and how, and finding your subject matter. And the thing was, the song that you mentioned is a song called Inside Susan, which is was a pulp song, but it kind of was inspired by my school days. And you know, my breakthrough was to realize that everyday life, the things that I did in my normal day-to-day existence, that was the most fertile ground for inspiration. Because I think when you start and you're thinking, well, maybe you don't know where to look. You may be looking to the heavens thinking inspiration's going to come from there, or you might read lots of books about music and think that you have to do that in order to be able to write a song. But I think to find your subject matter, you just have to tune in to yourself. You tune into all those things, like your upbringing, where you lived, what your parents did, what school you went to, what your friends did, what their families did. All that stuff that surrounds you has made you have a certain outlook on life. And if you find a way to express that, that's your subject matter.
Yeah. And it's going to speak to a lot of other people, because a lot of other people are in the same boat.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't think humans are that different to each other. You know, wherever you go, the motivating factors are the same. So if you can nail something, an experience, even if it's an experience that you know, like that first song that you played, the Peter Starstead song, you know, Where Do You Go to My Lovely? Hearing that song as a 5-year-old, I didn't know who Marlene Dietrich was. I didn't know what the Sorbonne was. I'd never sipped Napoleon brandy, let alone get me lips wet or whatever. But somehow by putting those details in that song, I could tell that it was for real. There was something real about it. And so it affected me, even though I had absolutely no idea what he was talking about.
So from the 14, 15, 16-year-old, which I guess was pulp at that point, like, where did we go through from there? Because you ultimately went to art school. Did you ultimately, you had a moment where you just kind of, was it giving up? Was it deciding it wasn't for you?
No, what happened was like I've been thinking about it actually, because I've been writing a book at the moment, and some of it has involved me thinking back to the roots of me first starting to play. And really, my career story, if it was in a film, should have stopped when I was like 17. Because what happened was, we formed the group, we did all the things you normally do. We played, our first ever concert was at school at lunchtime. Then we played in a local bands festival, and then we got invited to play, and we did all this stuff. And then we saved up some money to do a recording. And we recorded 4 songs in some guy had a studio set up in his house. So you had to record the drums in his bedroom, and then he mixed it in his kitchen. It was quite an interesting thing. But so we came away from that with a cassette tape. And then the guy that I mentioned to you at the start of this conversation, John Peel, he used to do like a roadshow. He used to go and play music in universities and colleges all around the country. And I saw in the newspaper that he was coming to Sheffield to play records. So I bought a ticket and went down. And then I kind of jumped on him as he was leaving the building, and I gave him this cassette and I said, "Hello, Mr. Peel. I'm a really big fan of your radio show. This is a cassette of my band. I'd just like you to have it." Yeah. And he gave it to him, and he said, "Okay, thanks. I'll have listened to it on the way home." And then like 3 days later, we got a phone call saying, "I'd like to speak to Jarvis Cocker, please. Yes, we'd like to book Pulp to come and play a radio session in London for the John Peel show." So this is like, you know, if this was in a film, that would be the end then. We'd go to London, record the radio session, fame and fortune, and all this. But what happened was, in real life, you know, I thought I'd gone to heaven. You know, I'd been listening to that show every night for 4 years, and then suddenly we were going to be on it. I thought, this is it. I'm going to be a pop star by the age of 18. And we went down, we recorded the session, it was broadcast. Nobody took very much notice of it. And all that happened really was that then when I finished school, I decided that I was going to stay and try and make music and make that my life. And the rest of the band, all their parents said, "No, you've got to go to university so that you can get a real job." And so I ended up in Sheffield all on my own, with no band.
What then restarted the engine? What then got it going again?
That's a question, you know, people often say, well, how did it happen, and why did you keep doing it? But I think if you really want to do it, if you're really driven to do it, you won't be able to help yourself, you know. No, even though you may suffer setbacks. And I moved to London, I studied art, I did 3 years, but always in the back of my mind, I was thinking about the band, and I was still thinking of ideas for songs. And if that keeps happening, you just have to accept the fact, for better or for worse, that's what you want to do with your life.
Sure.
In the end, I was lucky, because after 14 years, Pulp actually did get popular, but that was probably just an accident.
Yeah.
It could not have happened, you know. It's an unusual story in that respect.
14 years.
Yeah. Well, Pulp had their breakthrough with Common People, which was a big hit in the UK in 1995, and well, yeah, let's say the band kind of started in 1979, 1980. So yeah, we'd started to get a bit of attention before then, but yeah, it's a good 12, 13 years before anything happened.
Well, you know, it's easy to talk about these hit songs, but particularly with what we do and how much songwriting we do at the Rock School, and how much we just promote that whole process. Like, we've written hundreds and hundreds of songs. What, you know, very briefly, what, like with Common People, that's just a song you wrote, right? I mean, and what brought it to where it was? I mean, were you totally flabbergasted that that song just kind of skyrocketed the way it did? Were you surprised? Did you feel like that you were excited because it was emblematic of what you wanted to be as an artist? What were the kind of initial feelings when that started happening?
Well, I suppose the roots of that song were, as I came to the end of college, I was just coming to the end of college, and we got invited to play a concert somewhere in London. And even though the band hadn't rehearsed for a long time, we thought, oh, it'd be fun to play a show. And we played the show, and people clapped. And I thought, wow, that's different, you know. So that gave me encouragement. And so then, after I left college, I actually just went back into being in a band, but we were actually starting to play now, and we were more based in London. And so I started to get encouraged. But I mean, with the song Common People, there are a lot of random factors that made it happen. The start of that song really was, there's a second-hand record shop in London called the Record and Tape Exchange, and that's in Notting Hill. You probably
know it quite well.
Yeah, so they used to have this thing where you could take old records in and sell them for money, which I was always having to do because I was always running out of money. So, but what they would do is they would give you, say, £30 for some records, but if you accepted vouchers for their other shops, they'd give you £60 of vouchers. So that was a good value. So they had a musical instrument shop next door. So I accepted the vouchers, went next door, and I bought a little Casio keyboard, which I'm sure you've probably got one of those behind you.
I do have a few, yes.
Like just a kind of portable battery operated keyboard. I just wanted a keyboard that I could have at home, because all the other equipment was too big, and I was living in a very, very small flat. So I needed something that you could just turn it on and it had a speaker and you could just play. You could just sit on the couch and you could play. So I handed over the vouchers, got the keyboard, went back home. And I'm sure also, when you buy a new instrument, you're kind of excited. You're thinking, oh,
sure,
what maybe there's a song hidden inside this instrument somewhere. If I'm careful, if I shake it, it'll come out. So I got some batteries, turned it on, started playing, and it had a kind of auto chord thing, and I started playing that, and then playing this tune, a very simple tune. And then also, I don't know if you've ever analysed that song. It's only got 3 chords in it.
It's 1-4-5.
Yeah. So I was staying true to my punk roots there.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It seemed, I liked the kind of anthemic, even though I was playing it on a really bad, tiny little keyboard. It seemed to sound a bit anthemic or something. So I thought, oh, that's okay. So I recorded it on a cassette so I wouldn't forget it. Because I can't write music. I still can't write music. So that's the only way that I can. I mean, now it's easier because you can record things on your phone, but it used to be quite scary sometimes if you had an idea for a song and then there were no cassette tapes, or the batteries had run out in the cassette player, and you'd have to keep trying to sing it in your head until you could find some way of recording it. I recorded it, and then with that song, that was a rare point where the very first time we played it at a festival. We played it at a festival in the UK called Reading Festival in 1994, before we'd ever recorded it. In fact, I'd only just finished writing the words the day before the festival. and I got some of the words wrong. I only know that because somebody found a video of the festival recently and showed it, and so I got the words wrong. But we did get a clue there because, again, people really reacted to it, even though we'd never played it before. So then I thought, oh, this song may have got something.
This image of you buying this dumpy Casio keyboard and shaking it and common people coming out is just incredible. But it's
but I think that's the thing, you know, and I still think that, you know, my ambition is to one day write a song that's only got one chord in it. You know, I think that I really like simple songs. I like, because you can do a lot with one chord. You know, the Beatles, Tomorrow Never Knows, one chord. Sure. Amazing song. I mean, an absolute mind blower of a song, really, you know. But there are lots of other things that you can do with a song to give interest to it. And yeah, so I still try and express myself in as simple terms as is possible.
With Pulp, in terms of the songwriting in that collaboration, was that relatively democratic?
It varied, really. We would do a lot of improvising, you know, where we would just, sometimes we would just say things like, okay, we're at the top of a mountain. What does that sound like? And everybody would try and make a sound on their instrument that sounded like you were on the top of a mountain. And they were always fun to do those things. Sometimes it would lead to something, you know. Again, I would just, anytime something sounded okay, I would press record. And then when I got home later, I would listen to those things. And then at the next rehearsal, I would play the bit that I thought sounded good, and then we'd work on that. Mm. Sometimes I did write songs on my own and take them in. And yeah, we kind of, you know, there's a Pulp song called Babies, which was one of, in this period just after I'd finished art school, was one of the first songs that became vaguely popular by us. And that was actually, the first part of that was written by our drummer. Because when we got bored in a rehearsal, we would sometimes say, all right, well, everybody swap instruments then. So I would go and play the drums, or, you know, and we'd all, and Nick, our drummer, picked the guitar. And because he was a drummer, he didn't really know how to play the guitar. So he was trying to play an A chord, which is this, but he got his fingers in the wrong place and played it all one string up. So he got this chord instead, which I thought, and then he played, and I thought that chord sounded good, and so that became, which is well, it happened years ago, when you lived on Stanhope Road. We listened to your sister when she came home from school. She was 2 years older, and she had boys in her room. So that was the basis of that song. It was a complete accident.
2 chords, and one of them was a mistake.
That's what happens when you let a drummer touch a guitar.
You should let it happen more often, man. That's such a great tune.
In one review, it said that we sounded a bit like the Velvet Underground. I think that just meant that slightly out of tune, you know, because a lot of the Velvet do sound slightly out of tune. But because, so I'd heard the name of the Velvet Underground, but I'd never really heard a song by them. So so I went and found a record and bought a record. And then they were very influential on me, because just the fact that they had very kind of tuneful and quite melodic songs, and then others that were just completely like kind of like having your face sanded off, you know. So that, I mean, that one we just played, there's like in a bit of a middle ground. But I also liked the way that Lou Reed played like a rhythm guitar with all that ting 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 ting, and I tried to kind of copy that, and a lot of he was a big influence on my songwriting for sure. And I liked the fact that sometimes it sounded a bit out of tune because we were always sounding out of tune. They didn't really have electronic tuners in those days, so you had to have these little things called pitch pipes, you know, where you go, poo, poo, you know, like a very bad mouth organ, just like, and then you'd have to try and, but like a poo, poo note never sounded like a guitar note, so it was really, really hard to tune a guitar. Just
You know,
kids nowadays just do not realize how lucky they are.
between pitch pipes and cassettes, Jarvis, you're really painting yourself in a corner.
Back in the olden days, yes.
Exactly, and no one has any idea what you're talking about, Jarvis. My God.
No.
But yeah, I think for me, one of the things with Velvet Underground that I'm still just so shocked about is like how you can have this incredible combination of such really just beautiful melodic playing or songs, you know, beautiful melodies, beautiful harmony, just combined with that, as you say, like kind of shaving your face off sound. It's no one sounds like them. It's just an incredible combination of creates such a vibe. But all right, well, everybody, probably aside from a few parents on this event, is in a band, and you are one of the few that had maintained band for a very long time. And I remember when I saw you guys when you did your show in Paris, which was maybe like 2013 or something, 2014. I mean, it could be wrong. 2012. Okay. Everybody looked like they were having a good time, and I think I even got to meet the band after, and everybody looked like they had a good time. And what was the secret to your longevity as a group?
I think probably because the criteria right from the beginning of the band was not really ability, it was just availability. It was people who didn't have anything else to do or were curious or who I got on with, you know. I mentioned the drummer before, the one who invented the song by playing the wrong chord. Well, he became a member of the band due to we'd lost our drummer. He'd gone off to do something else or something, and this guy said, "Oh, I might be a drummer," but I didn't know him at all. So I said, "Well, come round to our house and we'll have a practice. You know, let's see how it works out." So he came to my mum's house, and he had this white dog with him. And I said, "Well, I thought that's a bit weird coming to a practice with a dog. You know, what's going to happen with it? Is he going to set the dog on me if I don't let him in the band? What's happening?" You know, I said, "Oh, you brought your dog. What's your dog called?" He said, I don't know. He's just followed me from the bus stop." So he got off the bus to come to our house, and then this dog had followed him, and he couldn't get rid of it. It wouldn't go away. So I said, "Oh, well, we better try and find out who it belongs to." So we spent the whole evening walking this dog around the area, hoping that it would suddenly recognize where it was and go into a house or something. It didn't. So then we took it to a police station, but the police station was shut. So, but in the end, it was 10 o'clock at night. We just threw it over a garden wall because we thought we've got to get rid of this dog. And then I said, "Oh, it's too late for us to rehearse now, but you seem nice. You could be the." So that was it. So I didn't even know if he could play the drums. I just knew that he was kind to animals. And I think, you know, not everybody joined in the same way, but it was more that we got on as people. That was that whether we could play or not wasn't really that important. We all kind of learned to play together. And I think that in the end, that gave us a sound that was unique to us. You know, Nick, the drummer I mentioned, had a tendency to speed up. And the song that we mentioned earlier, Common People, I think somebody has tracked the tempo differences in that song. It starts at something like 110 BPM and it finishes at something like 150 BPM. Now, that might sound like boring muso talk, but that doesn't normally happen. You know, things might speed up by like 3 or 4 BPM because that's just what happens. But that much of a speed up throughout a song is pretty weird. But the thing is, that's what gives a song its energy. The fact that it just keeps building and keeps getting faster and more intense as the song goes on. And you know, maybe a purist would say, well, you shouldn't speed up. You know, a drummer should play in time, or you know, keep at the strict tempo. But we all learned to kind of follow each other, and therefore it did work for us.
That's amazing. I mean, it does end on such a kind of frenetic feeling at the end of that song, and I'm sure that's a huge part of it. Is that bump in BPM? Okay, so your drummer gave you gave you Babies and Common People. I mean, I hope he has been rewarded for these two choices. I mean, for these two gifts. Wow, I love these. I love these stories. It's amazing. But did did fame, or also then the kind of expectation of the industry to continue and to keep churning stuff out, I'm sure there were moments when the relationships were frayed, but were they ever really broken, and you just all kind of were able to maintain some sort of, I don't know, guiding light or focus on why you were doing it, and that's what kind of gelled you guys together? I mean, because obviously it's music making, but it's so much about, as you say, it's about relationships, and you have to kind of take care of those first for the music to survive.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I've started feeling that I've got a band again now. You know, for a while I didn't have a band for about 10 years. And then for the latest thing I've been doing, this Jarvis project, which is confusing because it's kind of my name, but it is a group. But anyway, so I've had a band again for the last 3 years, and it was interesting to go back into that after not having it for a while. And I've kind of realized that I'm happiest in that environment, really, because I like the fact that you can have an idea and then everybody adds things, and then this idea kind of just grows, you know, and no one can say exactly where it all came from, but it's a combination of you as a group of people, and everybody brings their own thing. You know, it's bigger than it could be from any one person doing it on their own. And that's the great thing that can happen with a band, that you can end up with something that is more than the sum of its parts. And I'd kind of forgotten how exciting that is when it works. And it just makes it fun, you know, and so, you know, that's the great thing about bands. Bands rule. You know, I was just lucky that I was able to do things like the radio show and stuff like that. But it's like I was saying to you earlier, all the time, you know, at some points I thought, well, maybe, you know, I'm an adult now, so maybe I'm going to be a broadcaster or something like this. But if you still keep getting that voice in your head at night, you know, that says, here's an idea for a song, or how about this for a line in a lyric or something. If those things keep happening to you, then you just have to take notice of it, you know, and that's what I did. So I was still kind of working on songs all through that 10-year gap. But then the key that unlocked it really was to form a band. And as soon as that happened, all these things that seemed to be taking such a long time and being difficult disappeared because there were other people there. So it just made it a lot easier. It breathes. Suddenly there was some life, and they started to grow spontaneously without me having to kind of be there, kind of going desperately to make it happen. You know.
Sure. Well, I thought it was interesting when, you know, we worked on the song that that's on their new album a few years ago, and that process of you know, it kind of started spawning from a little meeting that we had here, actually, and then, you know, a couple weeks later you threw back, you know, a verse or something, feeling like, okay, this sounds kind of good, and then we went into the studio to record it. It was all this. It was such an interesting, for me, it was an interesting way of collaboration and writing, and like you had just rented the studio for a week, and I forget the name of the was it Fabiano, or one of the drummer from the Strokes was there, and we did some jam there as well, and you were kind of like just throwing all these little pieces out there and seeing how people would respond. And I guess you were like amassing just some things and seeing if any of those threads kind of wove into something else, or was that how you were working for a while?
Yeah, and yeah, I was just trying any. I think that's another thing, you know, with songwriting, is you have to keep kind of trying new things out, and at that point, I mean, the time you're referring to, I was asked to kind of do a piece of work for Red Bull had a studio in Paris. I think maybe they've still got one somewhere. So there was a recording studio and also a little gallery, and they asked me to do something there. So I had a week in the studio. So I thought, oh, well, I just thought I'll try lots of different ideas. I mean, that's an amazing luxury to have a studio for a week.
For sure.
So, you know, you came down for a day. We had a piano in there, and that's really where this song called Swanky Modes, which is on the Jarvis album, came from. You know, I think at the time, you know, we were trying to write a song for rock school. I think you were doing an event where you wanted to try and get the pupils to kind of write a song in one evening session. We'd kind of try and write some music, and then the kids would work on some words for that as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were trying some ideas out, and obviously that song, Swanky Modes, isn't really a child-friendly song, especially with the words it's got with it now. That you played that thing, and I just thought, oh, that's great. You know, I didn't know what it was. It definitely wasn't what we were attempting to do at the time. But, you know, that's the point, that if you create a situation, you don't know where it will lead off. And I think it's just creating those situations and just keeping your eyes and ears open, so that when you hear something, you go, aha, that's good. And as you know, that song, the germ of it was written 5 years ago. It wasn't like I was working on it for 5 years, but it took 5 years for it to really solidify and turn into something proper, which is, you know, a real song.
Yeah, and to find its place amongst the other ones. And that process, though, like, it really involves, there's a whole lot of kind of confidence behind that to just kind of let yourself embrace those moments and roll with those moments. And have you ever felt, you know, the famous imposter syndrome, that, you know, so many people feel like, well, like you said earlier, I know how to play bar chords, I know how to play a few chords, but I'm not, you know, some great guitar player. Have you had those moments of self-doubt at times, and were they really hard to work through, or have you kind of, I mean, also you've done so many different things, and, you know, whether it's the radio show or, you know, film work and writing, I mean, you're really putting yourselves in you're putting yourself in a lot of different arenas, where in those arenas there are a lot of experts and a lot of professionals that maybe you don't fit in with. How have you rolled with that feeling? Or do you have that feeling at all? Maybe you don't.
No, I always feel like an imposter. I always feel like I haven't really got. I'm always nervous. You know, I'm always nervous before going on stage. I'm not a particularly, you know, overly confident person. I'm a bit better now, and I've learned to kind of relax, because what I've learned is that if you go into a situation too uptight, or if you try and control a situation too much, you'll usually end up messing it up. That can apply to relationships and other things in life as well, not just songwriting. But, you know, you kind of have to just have a little bit of faith in yourself, and also just believe that if something good does start to happen, you'll just go along with that. And it is a little bit of a leap, and there's always the chance that it's not going to work, but you just have to be prepared to take that chance. Once you've it's like jumping into a cold swimming pool. It's kind of painful when you first jump in, but if you scrabble around a bit, you warm yourself up, you know. So it's just that initial thing of taking the plunge. As I was saying earlier, you know, it's like that initial thing of writing a song and that awful moment where you pick up the guitar and you're about to play it and you suddenly think, oh, maybe this song is really shit, you know, and the person is sat there waiting for it, and you just think, oh, I wish I hadn't, you know, and you just have to play it and then open your eyes at the end of it and see whether they're still awake or if they've left the room or whatever. And usually you find that it's fine. You know, you just have to take that little chance, and it's hard. It's always hard. It never gets totally easy, but it does. I think it does. The more you do it, the easier it gets, I think.
And I also imagine that that feeling of kind of unsteadiness and exiting your comfort zone, you kind of need to have that as you know, the longer your career is, because if not, it just becomes boredom, and boredom is dangerous. And you know, maybe you find ways with all these different projects to give yourself that feeling, because if not, where's the excitement come from?
Yeah, there is a bit of that. I think you have to, yeah, you don't want to repeat yourself. And I have been writing songs for a long time now, so I don't want to go over the same ground that I've already done. Yeah, I mean, I think that's it. You know, like when we talked about buying the Casio keyboard from the record and tape exchange, you know, sometimes trying to play an instrument that you're not really familiar with will be a thing. Or maybe I don't play the guitar for 2 months, and that means that when I go back and play the guitar, it feels a bit new to me again or something, you know. And little things like that to stop yourself from getting, as you say, too formulaic. Because if you fall into a formula and you don't surprise yourself, then you're not really going to probably engage somebody who listens to the song either.
I can't thank you enough for taking the time. This has been so fun to chat with you.
And hi to everybody in Paris who I haven't seen for ages. And yeah, I hope that we can kind of meet in a more kind of physical, analog way very soon.
I'm sure we can. Jarvis, it's always a pleasure to talk to you, for taking the time for PSRS. It means a lot to us. So let's all unmute for one quick second to give a huge thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers, man. Thanks very much.